So now we're going to explore our reader, but our reader as you. We're going to start with the inner work, the inner you. And we're going to answer the questions about who is our ideal reader. Because we want our book to make an emotional connection with them. And we need to understand our journey so that we can understand the journey of our ideal reader. Now, we may not be our ideal reader. And in fact, we probably aren't, because we've already done the work. Our ideal reader is somebody who is going on a journey. And this is the journey that you've been on through your book. And we always have one reader that we're writing to, because it's easier to make a connection with one person, and it creates a much, much better book. It makes it more likely to sell. And we always have to remember the book is about other people. It's not about us. But right now, it is about you. So remember, core message for our reader. Every chapter answers questions, and every chapter has a key message. And it always, always comes back to core message, the result that the reader will get from reading your book. So like I say, we're going to start by doing the inner work. We're going to work on you first. So draw a matchstick person, and we're going to start to add in attributes. And one of the things I found really helpful is when I've done the drawing of my ideal reader is to stick it up when I'm writing so that I can see it and it keeps me focused. So let's imagine our book is about our personal journey. So around your ideal reader somewhere, the picture of you, is to map out that personal story. So, where does the story start? What are your obstacles or threats or wake-up story? What were the challenges that you went through? Why these challenges? What choices did you make that led to the results that you got? What actions did you take? What's the learning point or the moral of the story? Why was this story told? And what does the reader get? And how does it end? Now, I'm not looking for you to write war and peace. This is just make some key words just to remind yourself of your personal story. So it's subject, situation, challenge, choice, outcome, and the end. If it were a process, what is the process? So, for example, if I were writing a book on how to write a book, I would take you through this kind of process. So just write down just those key steps. Now, you hopefully will have heard of the unconscious competence model. And I use this a lot in coaching and training. And on the back of your matchstick person, I want you to write, so draw 4 little boxes and then write unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, conscious competence, and unconscious competence in each of those boxes. And I want you to go back in time and start off with when you didn't know what you didn't know, what were you asking? So this is about putting questions in each of these boxes. So what questions were you asking at each of the stages? What you didn't know, or what didn't you know that you now know? Remember, the book is a journey. And we're really wanting to get deep inside ourselves to understand our own journey so that we can understand how to make this journey, how to deeply connect with our ideal reader when they make a similar kind of journey. But also in doing this, you'll get a lot of ha-has about why you're writing your book. So in traditional marketing, we do segmentation. Now, obviously, you know how old you are and what your gender is and some of these questions, but write them down anyway. When you get to the next step, which is working outwards, you'll start to look at this in a slightly different way, because the age of your ideal client may not be the same age as you. But I'm just getting you used to answering these questions. Now, one of the things I want you to look at is how you do things. How and why do you buy stuff? What is your process? Because we know that how we do anything is how we do everything. And it's understanding those steps. So you might do this in several different ways. You might look at perhaps how you buy a book, how you consume a book, how you might buy a piece of technology, how you might buy food. Have a look at how you do various things. But in the context of writing your book, what I'd like you to look at is how you buy and consume books. So, for example, I read my fiction on Kindle, and I tend to read things in like a big mass of time. I like to get completely lost in it. Whereas when I buy a non-fiction book, I need the physical book because I use it by the side of my bed for journaling. I do start at the beginning and then I tend to flick around. So how do you buy books? Where do you hang out and why? So where do you hang out physically and where do you hang out online? Because this will start to help you when you come to do research about where your ideal reader hangs out and why they do. And then I want you to think about the sociographics, individual characteristics, people's values and passions, their attitudes, your friends, your hobbies, what influences you, how do you think, feel and reason about these things. But apply this to how you select between different books and authors. Another thing I get people to do when they're looking at their book is looking at where their book is in the hierarchy of needs. So for this exercise, I want you again to look at what questions are you asking at every single stage of this hierarchy of needs as you go through your journey. Now, your book might be addressing something at a particular level, or it might be taking somebody through a journey all the way to what Maslow calls self-actualization. So, for example, if you were writing a book about, teamwork, for example, it might be at the belonging and love needs. If you're writing something about personal branding, it might be at the esteem needs. But actually, your book might take someone through the whole thing. But again, it's just a way of understanding what kind of questions you were asking as you were flowing through your journey at each of these stages. Now, my next question is, are you led by passion, meaning, or motion? So thinking about yourself, when you're writing a book, when you're doing stuff, do you do it based on your passion because you want to make the world a better place? And this is me, I have a journal by the side of my bed. I've already said that. And I'm always considering how I serve the world. And when I measure success, it's about impact, not about figures in a spreadsheet, although I do my figures in a spreadsheet because it's important to do it. So what about the reader who wants to dive deeply into their feelings and find meaning and make meaning? So when you're writing for this reader, it's all about helping them to find meaning. So is that you? What about the reader that's very practical and they love systems and processes and things that flow from one step to another? They might be setting goals or intentions, and then they might use your book to help them to create accountability. And your book is going to teach them something very, very practical. They like motion. They like to get things done. Is this you? Or actually, are you all three? And what does this tell you about yourself and about yourself in the context of the book that you're writing? because we want to write a book that we feel passionate about, that helps people to make motion and to do something with it. So what are the actions that you took that changed your life? It's all about insight. What insight have you gained? What have you learned from it? Because your reader is going to want to know this. So really this section is all about describing you then and bringing yourself to you now. Finding those aha moments, those insights. But always remember, the book is about your reader, it's not about you. But in this section, it is about us, and it's taking ourselves back to a time when we didn't know, because we want to put ourselves in our reader's shoes. So that's it for today. So thank you very much for taking part. What next? Well, download the slides, go through the content, answer the questions. You can get the slides and this recording by going to daledarley.com and going to the resources page, and you can sign up for the core message and ideal reader. Remember that when you signed up, you got a workbook with 50 questions. Please do go through them, because that will help you to explore. Start at the point that gives you the most resistance, because when you get through the resistance, you get the most insight. So write down the 3 things that you've learnt today, the 3 things you've learnt about your book, and I want to know, what is the one action that you are going to take? Now, please do connect with me. You can find a little button on Dale Darley Connect page, and you can book in to have a conversation about your book. I also run online courses. I run a course called Plan Your Nonfiction Book in a Weekend. And I also run masterclasses, which are around planning your nonfiction book. I run these monthly. I run them 1 month over a weekend, so it's a really big intensive. And then the following month, I run it over 4 separate days, but shorter time frames, so that people from all around the world can actually take part. And I have a nonfiction discovery session where we dive deeply into your book and help you to make sense of it. And there is an online course called Write the Right Book, which is all about answering those 50 questions. So please do come and connect with me, Dale Darley Connect, and book it yourself in for a conversation. So this is me. And these are all of the different ways that you can get hold of me. So Q&A. What questions do you have? What stood out for you? What ahas or insights do you have? And what are you going to stop doing today? What are you going to start doing? Or what are you going to do differently based on what you have learned?